Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. Today I want to talk about consoles versus handhelds. This is always an interesting topic because, people play video games in many different ways. And the reason why I started thinking about this was I watched the Atari Creeps video. He did a video about the recent news about the Amico home Valentine's Day thing. And he was talking, like in his video, he talked about handhelds and how he likes, at first he would like the handheld and then the novelty would wear off and he just wouldn't care. And he would just go right back into the console. Now, obviously, back in the day, we we started all off with the consoles. So, the Atari came out. There was a lot of consoles at the time, right? We had the Odyssey 2, the Odyssey 1, the Vectrex. I mean, everything was a console. The ColecoVision, even the Nintendo era. It wasn't until Nintendo started to come out with stuff like this, and I know that they're not the only ones. This is the Game & Watch. This is the Zelda one. I don't think I've actually tried to play this one. I bought this at a secondhand store for like $1. But anyways, yeah, this was a great find. But, obviously they started off with that. And the handheld gave us the D-pad, which, eventually made its way into the Nintendo NES. But, I've always found these things fascinating. And in fact, even at the time when I had a Nintendo, I really wanted that guy. That's right. The Game Boy. I was really fascinated by the Game Boy. When it first came out, I thought, that is so cool. I can take this to school. I can go on a road trip. I could have something that I can play video games with. I love that it had cartridges. This is the Zelda one. It had little cartridges that look like mini NES cartridges. I love this idea. I love the concept of it. And then when I got my Game Boy, finally after a while of saving up money and stuff and then convincing my father to take me to the store to buy one and get a couple of games for it. And then I sat there playing it. I remember he came down, he looked at the screen, he's like, that looks like piss. He wasn't wrong. I mean, the Nintendo Game Boy was a little bit far from perfect during its day. But it still gave me that pleasure. But at the same time, for most cases, I would put it down and I would keep going back to my console. I'd want to play on the Nintendo itself with the controller. Even at the time, I wanted to play with my Atari 2600 because, I love the feel of a real controller in my hand. Having the button, the full control of playing on a big screen on my TV. And even at the time when I was playing my Game Boy, I was totally wishing that there was a way I could connect this thing to my TV so I could still play it. And it didn't happen until a little bit later on when Super Nintendo came out with the Super Game Boy, which I ended up picking up later on, where I can actually play my Game Boy games on the TV. The thing is, by the time that happened, emulators were starting to become a thing, and then you could just play them on your computer anyways. But it was still cool when I bought that Game Boy, Super Game Boy, which it's not a handheld. I mean, this is a handheld. The Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, and all of them are handhelds. But the Super Game Boy is not. I mean, it's purely a cartridge expansion unit you put into your Super Nintendo, then you put the cartridges, the Game Boy cartridges, and you play Game Boy games on your big screen. But even today, like if we look at some of the stuff that came out, like we obviously do have more Game Boys that came out. This is the Game Boy. Which one is this one? I totally forgot which one is it. DS2? I think it's the DS2. I don't know. But yeah, this is the Game Boy came. It's still around today. And we have things like this from at games the Atari. Well, this is Atari 2600 emulator running games, but it's cool because it does have that card slot. You can change the games in and out, and I really like this too. I even still kept the box and everything. That it's all has all the games that are on there, and it's got the nifty SD option of adding more games. Now, the cool thing about this is that you can actually plug this into a TV and have it feed onto the TV, which is what I really wanted from this guy. And then it makes me wonder, do I really care about the handheld portion of it? I mean, for a while, yeah, I was putting this in my pocket and I was taking it with me. And, you know, when I had to be on a train or something like that, you know, I might be able to pull this out. But there's a problem here. We're in a day of cell phones. So I also have my cell phone. I can pull that out and play games on that too. So at this point, it's like, do the handhelds matter? Now there's one handheld that I'm not talking about, and yeah, sure, this guy's a handheld too, but I mean, let's get real. I barely ever play this as a handheld. I connect this to my TV and I play it on my TV all the time. But I'm talking about the Evercade. Now, this is something that the Atari creep himself talked about in his video. I don't have an Evercade. I don't know. I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking if I bought one, if I want one, or if I'm going to buy one, what my thoughts on it were. Don't get me wrong. I think it looks really cool. I mean, yes, the Evercade's sort of like the Switch in a way where you can get the version that just plugs into your TV, or you can get the handheld, and you know, you can mix and match and blah blah blah. Now, the Evercade looks great. And a lot of the games that are available for it, they're all retro, a lot of retro-inspired or retro games themselves, which really make it appealing to me. But I think I'm on the same kind of wavelength that the creep was talking about, and that was, I'm just not into just constantly looking at this little screen and playing, you know, playing video games on a tiny little device. Like, I find a novelty in it. In fact, I even have a pretty big collection of handhelds because I went through a phase where I just love these things. I bought those Tiger Electronics ones. You know, I got a whole bunch of those. I got these little tiny mini handhelds that I got from Radio Shack. I was buying up handhelds left, right, and center. I even have the keychain ones that have like Donkey Kong Jr. and stuff. And most of those are just sitting on my display over there. I don't think I'll ever actually sit there and want to play one. I would much rather plug in my Intellivision, my Atari, my ColecoVision onto my TV and play on my TV. Or play on my computer, play on a PC, you know, with emulation. Those are my preferred ways of playing it. So it really is interesting. And what the creep said was he had his Evercade for a little while. He had a good number of games, and then he sold it off because he said, you know, at that point I just kind of lost interest in it. I'm not going to be using it. But at the same time, I find these things, I still find them fascinating. I still love having the ability that if I want to play Atari 2600 on the road, I can do that. I can carry this around. It's very small, it's very lightweight, and it's a hell of a lot better than when I tried to play Atari games on my cell phone where you didn't have the actual buttons. You didn't have the D-pad feel. You had to use the touchscreen, which I did not like. I mean, try and play a game like Hero on the 2600 on a touchscreen. I could barely get to, I think, maybe level 10 before it would just get too awkward. The touch part of it was just not as responsive. If you want to play a game like Hero, you're going to have to play it with one of these because you need that firm control of the original joystick. That's what it was designed for. That's what it was, you know, when the game was created, that's what it was using, was an external, firm, nice piece of hardware, not a touchscreen. But anyways, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting kind of topic, or just thought that, you know, the handhelds do have their place, and they always will. I mean, there's always going to be the times where you could really use a handheld, you know, device. I remember even in school when I was a teenager, or even younger, going on school trips on the bus, and we all had the Tiger handhelds and the little tiny electronic things, and you know, when there was like a break or a stop, we would all kind of like get together and switch handhelds, because, you know, those things, one screen, very little graphics to it, maybe a few levels. You'd get tired of it, and then you'd pass it on to your friend, be like, hey, let's swap. I'll take your Double Dragon. Here's my Mega Man 2. And then at the end we'd switch back, you know, that kind of thing. And those were great memories, and being able to do that was really cool back then. Today, not as much. I mean, we have so much available. We have so much to offer, and of course, we have the cell phone, which is, you know, pretty much every young kid is glued to nowadays. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter for them. But for people like me who really like the nostalgia, who really like the feel of a real game, the physical feel, I don't know. I'm still going with the console on this one. I think the console is always going to win out. And like I said, I was talking about about the whole Amico thing and how they're going to be releasing these controllers at some point, where it's still all virtual. It's not there's no console, and I don't know. I'm still more on the consoles. Yeah, I'm an old guy. That's just the way it is. I like my hardware. I like my physical media, and I'm gonna say yeah, I prefer the console. Anyways, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Always a fun topic to talk about is the handhelds versus the consoles, and what do we prefer? And maybe that's why I, in the end, really do kind of like my Switch. I like having both. Anyways, let me know what you think. Throw some comments down below. Hope you subscribe. Talk to you later.